Hi, everybody. I'm really thrilled today to have the opportunity to talk with Al Huntoon, who is a social worker and a co-parenting advisor, and who has a really fabulous website called the co-parent, or not the, called coparentingconnection.com. And so our talk today, with the many women in our community who still have children at home and are co-parenting with an ex-husband, and are finding it challenging for all sorts of ways. This is a great opportunity for us to talk with Al, who has so much experience and is really, knowledgeable in this area of trying to figure out how to co-parent with an ex, particularly if it's challenging, if there's conflict, if you feel as though he's throwing furniture in the way of you making plans and everything becomes very difficult. And so I want to welcome you, Al, for coming and thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to be able to share your expertise with us.
Well, thank you for the invitation to this conversation, and thanks for the kind introduction. I'm really looking forward to talking with you about this, and I want to acknowledge your expertise and experience as well.
Okay.
I think your focus is really on people, particularly women, who find themselves in a very difficult situation, perhaps one
Yes.
of the worst that people can encounter.
Yes.
And I think that really calls on us to bring our the best of our skills to helping people in those often very extreme situations.
Yeah, yeah. And as you know, as I was anticipating our talk today, I was thinking that really in our community, it's really two issues that the women who are co-parenting, who have kids still at home, like 20 years old or younger, or 18 or younger. And the two issues are the one that I just, referred to, which is
Mhm,
co-parenting in a
mhm.
difficult situation where there's a lot of conflict in general with an ex-husband. And the second part, and I don't know if we'll have time to get to this, is that sense of the pain of sending your kids to the home of an ex
Mhm,
who may be living with the woman who was around at the end of your marriage, who was
mhm,
the other woman,
mhm.
and sending the kids there and having her involved in your children's lives. And she may be going to the meetings with the teachers or braiding your daughter's hair. And your daughter comes home with braids, and you're like, "Who did that?" And they say, "Oh, Gloria did it." You know, and how
Yeah.
painful that is to have that, that sending your children into the home of their father when the other woman is there. So that's a separate issue.
Mhm.
But
And there
let's
could,
start with the big issue,
okay.
about the co-parenting with the ex.
Mhm.
When there's conflict and when it feels as though just to make a simple decision about whether the kid should go into soccer or hockey, you have to go back and see a judge about that because there's no way of budging, you know, and coming to a compromise.
Yeah, so that is much my focus in my work and my thinking. I do a lot of writing,
Yeah.
and I call it asymmetric co-parenting conflict or asymmetric conflict.
Yes.
And like you're mentioning some things that complicate the situation for people, like a new partner for the ex. And another complication is that partner may have children,
Yes.
and the ex is kind of bringing some sense of urgency to blending the families. And all of a sudden there's some sort of pressure on the children to regard, these other kids who are, their new connections as being siblings of some sort. So that's another thing. The thing about the asymmetric conflict is I think it really it's very different from the standard co-parenting conflict.
Yes.
What happens a lot of times, and what can be frustrating to me, is that I'll write an article. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn, a lot of professional connections, attorneys, therapists, coaches. That's really valuable input. But I'll talk about the asymmetric conflict, and the first thing I'll talk about is something that applies to people where the conflict is more symmetric. Mediation,
Hmm.
right? That comes up right away. Co-parenting classes, some way to resolve the conflict. But the issue is that for a certain percentage, I don't know what it is, 10, 15, maybe 20% of people, those interventions don't apply,
Yes.
right? And so we need to bring better thinking um, to the situations where that kind of neutrality, even the neutrality that the court presents,
Yes.
is misapplied because there's an assumption of there's something mutual about it that our interventions, as a social worker, I think of all these things as interventions. Some of them are judicial, some of them are therapeutic, some of them are educational. Uh, Mediation and court, those are judicial
Mhm.
interventions, right?
Yes.
Then the co-parenting classes are educational interventions, and then there
Right.
might be some therapy, right, that helps people. And parenting coordination is another example of a judicial intervention, right? All of those start from a neutral standpoint, which
Right.
disadvantages the person who isn't driving the conflict, right?
Yes.
It assumes that self-interest will motivate people to look for a resolution. It may be a resolution that bends toward their interest,
Yes.
but they are interested in resolving it.
Hmm.
But in these cases, there's often not an interest from one party in resolving it. There's an
Yes.
interest for fueling the conflict um, as a way of power and control. And so that's what we're looking at. And so there's the initial pain of the separation. And
Yes.
just to be clear, I don't deal with married people who are married all the time. Sometimes people never cohabitated. Sometimes they did.
Yes.
But there's some similarities even still. There's some sort of rupture in the relationship,
Right.
right? That the person has to deal with. And then there's ongoing conflict, right? Which kind of distracts from addressing the rupture.
Yes.
So I think that's the experience that people have, and it takes place on a continuum,
Yeah.
right, from lower levels to extreme levels. And when we talked, and I have some experience with this, the most extreme level is when the partner leaves suddenly, either uh, motivated by an affair or some other reason. Sometimes there's other reasons that people leave suddenly. Uh, that aren't because of an affair. There are other
Right.
factors,
Sure.
right? They're basically escaping their lives. They
Mhm.
can't do it in a straightforward, what we think of as a civilized manner. They feel like they need to escape. And in both cases, there's similarities. People make plans, they're
Mhm.
secretive, they're
Mhm.
deceptive,
Yeah.
they often leave without explanation, right? Or any accountability. That is it's an extreme crisis for people,
Yes.
right? It's
Sure.
a
As
shock.
we
It's
well
a
know.
shock.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And then there's ongoing, you could think of that as being traumatizing, and then there's ongoing re-traumatization from the
Yes.
conflict,
Yeah.
right? The
Sure.
person is so not only is there asymmetric conflict, but in those situations, there's asymmetric agency.
Yes.
The other person
Mhm.
stole the choices, right? From the parent that remains in the house
Exactly. Yeah.
with the children. They're
Yeah.
stealing the agency by robbing them of those choices. So
Yes.
that's another injury. So we have to think, we need to think about, if we really want to help people, like, not about the standard interventions, but
Yes.
what can help people in these situations. And I put a lot of thought into that. Uh, you know, so I'm curious what you think about all of that.
Yeah. But I think, this idea of asymmetric conflict. is sort of the core of what we're dealing with. You know, and that it's not mutual. It's not like you can go to mediation and each person has an equal amount of power. And where one person is trying to exert more power on the situation, and the other person is expected to be accommodating and just do, what's been expected of her in this case.
Mhm.
Um, and so that it makes her very powerless in negotiating with him. And that is it's pretty overwhelming, and
Mhm.
and I love, the idea that you're saying of this re-traumatization, that every time they have to renegotiate who's going where for Christmas vacation, and what's happening about this, that, or the other thing,
Mhm.
it keeps reinforcing that role of being powerless
Yes.
against somebody who is very determined. And sometimes that person is determined to have his way, not because he really believes that it's best for the kids, but just because he wants to have his way.
It's
And it's not really coming from a good intention for the kids, but rather
Mhm.
to always
Right.
win.
Mhm. So I'm gonna back up and talk about my approach to these situations. And you may be familiar with Viktor Frankl,
Yes, of course. I love
man's
the work of
search for
Viktor Frankl.
meaning,
Yeah,
logotherapy.
totally. Yes.
Right. And what does Viktor Frankl have to say about circumstances that rob people of their agency? That they could, that your circumstances can take away everything but one thing, your choice of response.
Yes.
That's what I focus on.
Yes. Yes.
And what I tell people is I use a metaphor. Imagine a seed, right?
Okay.
And imagine if we didn't know anything about a seed and the function of the seed.
Yes. Okay.
And we saw that the seed had cracked open,
Okay.
that the seed was broken.
Yes.
And we took a kind of a healing approach or a repair approach,
Yeah.
and we try to put the seed back together.
Okay.
But the seed is not broken. The seed is in unfolding and becoming.
Yes.
People in this situation are not broken.
Mm-hmm.
They're in pain,
Yes.
right? And they are faced with a choice. Many of their choices have been taken away, but there's one choice left, and the choice is how to use that pain to go
Okay.
forward. Are they
Okay.
going to the pain won't go away,
Yes.
but are they going to use that pain as some sort of material to create meaning for themselves?
Yes.
Are they going to stay in that broken stage and wait for accountability for the other person,
Mm-hmm.
wait for the intervention from the systems that
Mm-hmm.
never comes,
Mm-hmm.
wait for a miracle from
Mm-hmm.
God?
Mm-hmm.
They can stay in that broken state and hope those things, you know, helpers like us,
Mm-hmm.
systems like the courts,
Mm-hmm.
accountability from the other person, some sort of intervention from the courts,
Mm-hmm.
or miracle from God,
Yeah.
or they can provide those things for themselves.
Okay. I love that. I love that way of thinking because it's really the only option.
Yes.
And you use a lot of emotional energy trying to get justice, where there is no justice. And so
Yes.
that you have to decide, how you are going to face whatever the challenges in life, in a way that empowers you. Even in situations, because I often say to
Hmm.
people, even if you've been victimized, it doesn't mean that you're a victim. You don't have to adopt a victim mentality.
Right.
And so how can somebody empower herself and make a choice to behave in a way that doesn't put her in that victim role?
Hmm. So here's my approach is
Yeah.
that what happens now at this point forward, people are negotiating with the world from one of two perspectives, one of two selves,
Hmm.
right? And so this is internal family dynamics.
Yes. Okay. Hmm.
Okay. They negotiate with the world from their broken, vulnerable self,
Yes.
or they negotiate with the world or their core self from a notion of their best self.
Okay.
So as a practitioner, my role is to help hold up a mirror and a map, hold up the possibility of growth. That if they can identify when they're operating, negotiating from their vulnerable self
Yes.
or their best self, right? That's
Okay.
the starting point.
Okay.
Understanding that there's these different ways to negotiate with the world. And then the first step is to recognize, when are you negotiating from your vulnerable self and when are you negotiating from your best self,
Yes.
right? To notice that. And then here's where the choice comes in, to choose to negotiate with the world from your best self.
Okay. So how can somebody reach down and pull out that best self? How can somebody get access to that way of thinking when they're so hurt?
Right. So the first, I mean, people they need safety, right?
Mhm.
They need that first. They can't operate from that from a sense of panic.
Yes.
So in the initial stages,
That's
it's
not
not for
accessible.
everyone.
Yeah.
That's Yeah, and that's what therapy is for, right?
Yes.
I'm not a therapist, I'm a
Yes.
coach,
Yes.
right? I'm, like you said, I'm an advisor.
Yes.
That I'm not taking, that's not, it's therapy informed,
Yes.
right? But it's not therapeutic. And so that's one thing I would say is this: if people, it's not for everyone. If you need to feel safe to move forward, I'm not the person you need to be
Yeah.
talking.
Okay.
But when they get to that point where there's some stability, external stability, not internal emotional stability, that's when we can do. And if people will accept that that is a valid way of looking at themselves and the world, right? And then start kind of witnessing
Yeah. Okay.
their their inner states, witnessing where they're coming from, right?
Hmm.
Uh, then they can start noticing that they're going to initially come from their vulnerable self.
Hmm.
Do I? And there's also sorts of examples like, oh, I don't have any energy. Do I have to do this? Do I
Hmm.
have to get out of bed? Do I have to go grocery shopping? Whatever it is,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's coming from the vulnerable self. That's
Hmm.
the vulnerable self negotiating the behavior to interact with the world. That's what people can start noticing, right? It doesn't mean that they're just going to squash that immediately. The vulnerable, what they want to do is just choose the other self, the best self. That self is there too.
I love that. Yeah.
That self is there too. That's what we have inside. And if the other part is they accept this framework, this perspective,
Hmm.
that they're not broken, they're just like a seed, and
Yes.
they're becoming a different
Mhm.
person,
Yes.
and their choices can kind of develop that path of what person they're going to become.
Yes.
Are they going to be kind of stuck in as broken,
Hmm.
as you know that needing repair? People in divorce often talk about repair,
Hmm.
but if we repaired the seed, we'd impair it from being able to develop in the way it's supposed
Hmm.
to be.
Okay.
If we focus too much on repair, I think that can impede the people's ability to move forward into growth.
Hmm.
So that's my basic perspective on the whole thing. And I think that works. It takes time, and I in the most extreme situations, my experience is limited, right?
Hmm.
It's toward the other end of the continuum where there's been a rupture in the relationship and ongoing conflict. But it's not, and this is not just for co-parenting. I think it would work for anyone in conflict.
Yes.
Like I said, it comes from logotherapy is the basic foundation for it. It's that's how the what we're doing is we're instead of experiencing the pain, we're experiencing the pain as a summons,
Yes.
right? As a summons to create meaning out of the pain
Yeah.
and
And
growth.
you talk about Viktor Frankl, and I give a retreat in which I read a passage from Viktor Frankl in which he talks about he's in this situation where he's suffering, suffering, suffering so much, and then he imagines that that it's now the future and he's on a stage and he's giving a talk and explaining about the suffering and that he's in a warm room with an audience sitting in comfortable chairs. And so he uses his internal strength not to just sink into the terrible physical suffering that he's experiencing, but nobody can take away from him his thoughts and his internal powers to
Mm-hmm.
use this situation as sort of a springboard to something else that actually did happen in the future, that he does go to or did go to,
It
audiences and
does.
talked about
Right.
the suffering and all of that. But can you give like sort of a concrete example how a woman who is trying to deal and negotiate with an intractable husband
Mm-hmm.
can use this skill? How can she, she's very worried about her kid who's not healthy and needs to go to a psychologist, and the husband says, "No, I don't give permission." And she's worried the child is developing an eating disorder or something, and the husband is absolutely against psychologists and thinks it's a bad idea. Like when the stakes are really high, then how could
Mm-hmm.
a mother in that situation sort of implement that higher self in a practical way?
Mm-hmm. So uh, I mean, there's a legal tactic to to deal with that, right? Then it's to take it to the court or
Yes.
parenting
Okay.
coordinator, right?
Yeah.
There's that, but that
Yes.
doesn't deal with the internal
Yes.
pain and confusion and concern, right? And
Yes.
so the what I would say is that the what is your vulnerable self saying about that, right? Oh, it's going to be awful. My child is never going to be able to recover.
Yes.
And in fact, my child's exactly like me,
Hmm.
right? Vulnerable,
Hmm.
broken,
Hmm.
uh, not resilient. Um, right. What and so what does the best self say?
Hmm.
The best self says, there are things that are not in my control. But what is in my control is how I parent my child when I'm
Hmm.
with them,
Hmm.
what I model for my child,
Hmm. Yes.
resilience,
Hmm.
strength, right?
Hmm.
Coming back to Viktor Frankl wasn't a victim
Hmm.
and he wasn't even a survivor.
Hmm.
He was the hero of his own story,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
He saw that his ability to do that wasn't just a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
It also like drove him to like incredible growth, unimaginable growth.
Yes.
And that's the thing that I think the best Viktor Frankl called on his best self.
Yes.
He could have been, I'm sure he was consumed with worry and uncertainty and physical and mental pain.
Yes.
But what he called on to address that, to cope with it, to combat it, was his best self. And it worked.
Yes, I just want to explain, just in case some people don't know who Viktor Frankl is, that he was a psychologist who was interned in a concentration camp during the war, and then went on and wrote a fabulous book called Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about how to get meaning out of whatever you're going through in your life. So that's just the backstory in
Mhm.
case somebody never heard of him, and
Right, right.
yeah, just
So,
to clarify
so,
that.
so the pain of that uncertainty about the child or the
Yes.
children, or the lack of choice, again, the asymmetric agency, the ex convito things that
Yes.
are obviously good for children.
Yeah.
That again, the idea isn't that it isn't going to be painful.
Yes.
The idea is that it's going to be painful and it's an opportunity to make meaning.
Yes.
And one thing I'd want to differentiate, because often in these situations, people talk about seeking meaning,
Yes.
right? Oh, what is the lesson in this?
Yes.
Right? Where's the silver lining,
Hmm.
right? That's passively seeking meaning.
Yes.
Everything happens for a reason.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're
That
talking about
is,
making meaning,
I'm talking about making meaning,
making
which
meaning,
is
which
different.
is a different thing. Yeah. Okay.
That's a different thing. It's active, it's not passive. That's
Yes.
taking agency again in
Yes.
one of the limited ways that people can do it. I'm
Yes.
not waiting for the universe to tell me what's going on.
Yes.
I'm going to tell the universe what's going on.
So, is there a
It's
certain element of acceptance in that? Do you have to accept this situation is going on? It is going to be painful. Maybe I can't send my kid to a psychologist if I can't get his
mhm,
approval. So I'm going to have to be my own kid's psychologist. I'm going to have to be, so a way of making meaning in this vignette
right,
that I made up here would be that the mom then learns everything she can about eating disorders and tries to guide her child herself. Would that be a way of
right.
making meaning, for example?
That would be a way of making meaning is to that's a growth, right?
Yes.
The mom or dad in that situation would have to empower themselves with knowledge, which
Yes.
would mean growing. It would be purposeful,
Hmm.
meaning making,
Yes.
right? And then it would drive behavior.
Hmm.
And also, I think it would, it isn't just learning and teaching; it's modeling. Modeling is the most important thing that
Yes.
parents do for children.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what
Which
they
really
they
requires
don't
that the
learn by watching.
parent, yeah, requires that the parent has to really work on themselves, to deal with their anxiety, to deal with their maybe bitterness, to control, not bad mouthing the other
Right.
parent, and creating a bad
Exactly.
example for the kid, and to try to be as centered and
Yeah.
empowered herself as she can possibly be.
Right. Modeling agency in a situation where the agency's been constrained.
Yes,
And the thing about children is, I think a lot of people don't realize this, but their little antennas are up.
yes,
And sometimes people in these situations are performative, right?
yes,
Which is better than being negative.
yes,
Right? Performing positivity is better than being
yeah,
negative.
yeah,
But even children sense that.
yes,
If the resilience, if the agency can be authentic rather than
yes.
performative, I
Yeah.
think it makes a difference for children.
Yeah, right. Okay. So maybe we'll I mean, this is a beautiful description of how a mom in this circumstance can shift her thinking. It's a reframing of thinking,
Mhm.
rather than trying to fight, 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 which you can do in the courts if you have to, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, but
Right.
not to be using all that emotional energy to be in a constant battle and feeling always, like you're being done poorly by and all of that, but rather to
Mhm.
stop and think, okay, this is the situation. How am I going to rise to this occasion?
Yes.
And create value and and strengthen myself as an individual so that I can model being the kind of adult and the kind of parent that I want my child to observe. And rather than for the child seeing this conflict going on, that the parent can make meaning, as you're saying, even in the face of a difficult situation like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Is that, and it's in the thing so that's adding a sense of purpose and duty to the
Yes,
whole thing, which I think scaffolds it right for people.
yes,
But the basic thing that I always come back to is the metaphor of the seed, right?
yes,
Because it's you're shaping what you're becoming.
Yes.
And by appealing to your best self,
Yes.
that is intrinsic to your personality. It's always there, and sometimes you're able to call on it, and sometimes you aren't.
Yeah.
But repeatedly appealing to your best self pulls you in that direction,
Yes.
right? And so I think it's not just modeling for the children.
Yeah.
It's doing this to become the person who you always were and you always could be, realizing your potential, just like the seed does,
Yes. Yeah.
right? The seed is just potential.
Yes. Yeah. I really love this. I really love this approach. It's very consistent with how I try to live my own life. And I'm sure that,
Mhm.
that our people in our runaway husbands community or any parent who's struggling with co-parenting can really take this and use this to think and to grow. So I think we'll leave it here,
Yeah.
Al. I want to reiterate, that people can get in touch with you through your website. It's a fabulous website. There's lots of options there. There's even a quiz that you can take right on the website, a co-parenting quiz. And
Yes,
so,
yeah.
yeah, it's really fun. There's lots of stuff
Hmm.
there. So the website is Co-Parenting Connection. Am I correct? It's singular. Yeah, coparentingconnection.com.
Yeah, co-parenting connection. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
if anybody
So
wants
can I leave you with yeah, can I just leave you with one thought that just want to reiterate is that
100%.
it's so natural and human for people to appeal to God and to
Yes.
ask for a miracle.
Yes.
But there is a do-it-yourself miracle here
Okay.
that we have the power. That's who we are. We can
Yes.
perform that miracle on our own.
Okay. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. So I hope that people will get in touch with you and learn from you because there's so much there. And thanks for talking with us, Al.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I've really enjoyed it.
Me
Thank you so
too.
much.
Okay, stop recording.